All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Jose and Nick's Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC 77 in Vegas. This is UFC Fight Night coming to you guys on July 15th, prelims starting at 6 p.m. with the headlining fight, Holm and Mayra Bueno Silva, an interesting women's bantamweight bout. Especially after it seemed like they were going to close the division with Nunes retiring, but we'll see. They're still holding fights, and wow, Holm still headlining cards into her low 40s. It's very impressive. But quickly, before we get into this week's picks, let's quickly recap from last week. What an eventful UFC 290 we just came across this past weekend, and both Jose and I just so happened to have the same 5 weight, and it smacked. I mean, just as we said, bet Bo and bet within the distance. It ended up being a changed fight too, because when we discussed the fight, Jose, it was Trayshawn Gore, and it gets changed to Valentine, and it didn't matter. And I told everybody who was asking me, at least, I said it wouldn't matter. You continue to bet Bo Nickel inside the distance. It's just a toss up. I mean, that dude had no UFC experience either. It's not like he was gonna be able to come in and provide really anything that I think Bo hasn't seen. So
Yeah, I think for that I think it would have been like a huge curveball too if the UFC did throw him like a legit guy.
oh yeah,
Like
dude, yeah. If they actually gave him a ranked any, like even bottom of the 15, even any ranked middleweight, then I'd been a lot concerned. The only thing going for Bo would have been just the fact that he went through a whole camp, and someone else would have had to come in last minute. But yeah, that would have made me big time nervous, especially if it's someone who has the ability to deflect takedowns pretty well, and at least maybe have a competition in wrestling. Maybe not obviously as good in wrestling, but just an ability to play defensive. That would definitely concern me, because we haven't really, I guess, who knows now that Bo has a KO under his belt. But I would have said last week that Bo's striking is subpar, but maybe that's not correct anymore.
for me I want to see him like the only thing is his opponent was a little undersized. It looked like Bo looked huge compared to him. So like that reason
Yeah,
with that speed, man, I was impressed.
I would
Especially the
say,
other guy, I thought the other guy was going to be the knockout guy. Like I thought
yeah,
that was his best weapon.
dude. Dude, I was just gonna say that I feel like he reminded me of middleweight's Michael Chandler build, like a stocky little short dude. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
he was built, but he was very small. But yeah, that being said, uh, Whitaker was the biggest loss we took in terms of weight last week. Totally, man. Like you did voice some concern more than I did, but in the end, we both had Whitaker really highly on our weights. So it was just a tough one there to take. But Volkanovski, I mean, clutch. Of course, he's going to get the job done. And then for me, the main other win there was my underdog Pantoja, and pretty much, not to pat myself on the back, but it really kind of did. The outcome was pretty much exactly what I predicted, in the sense that it's going to be close. I gave Moreno a lot of respect in that fight, and I didn't necessarily he was going to get finished, but he still lost the fight like I predicted, so I was very close. But he was my one weight. I had a couple of $100 on him in the underdog market, so that was a couple of wins, and that offset all the losses I took with losing the Whitaker bets, which is great. But yeah, that being said, that was a quick UFC 290 recap. We're going to have 2 pay-per-view cards this month, Jose. So get ready, as later in July, we're going to have another banger. But until then, the UFC isn't taking a break, because as I mentioned earlier, we got Holm versus Bueno Silva coming up on the 15th. And as usual, we're going to bring you guys our 5 most confident picks. Currently, there are 6 fights listed on this main card. So Jose and I have gone ahead and picked 5 of those fights, picked the winners of those fights, and weighted them from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most confident. 5 is the heaviest weight and the most confident pick of the bunch. And 1 is still your pick, but you're the least confident of all of your picks. So that being said, we're going to move forward with starting with our 5 weights, which, just to reiterate, is our most confident picks. And my 5 weight coming up on Saturday is going to be Albert Duraev versus Jun Young Park. And for me specifically, Jose, I'm going with Albert Duraev. I think he's a great wrestler, and I think in any case, no matter where this fight goes, he's going to be able to lean on that wrestling ability. And in fact, part of it too is the fact that he is an underdog, man. Plus 132 to Junyon Park's minus 170 as of right now, at least on FanDuel. So I'm curious to see what you have for this fight.
Yeah, Nick. So yeah, for this fight, I actually have Jung Young Park, the favorite. But he is my two weight. Reason being is he is riding a three-fight winning streak right now, which started off with a split decision win over Eric Anders, and I think Jung Young Park has a similar game to Duraev. I think they're both kind of well-rounded and both engage in the grappling department, but Jung Young Park has pretty solid wrestling defense, so Albert Duraev is really going to have to close the distance and just pin him down. But in Albert Drive, I will give him credit. He's been looking good. And even that TKO stoppage with Joaquin Buckley, that was pretty anticlimactic. And it's something I thought he probably was going to be. I was actually worried for Joaquin Buckley a little bit for that fight. So I do think Drive he probably could be on even a longer win streak than Jung Young Park, but I think Jung Young Park just being slightly younger too. I think he's just almost fitting in, like growing into his role into the UFC in terms of I think he's going to be ready to break into the top 15. Probably, probably after this win, he'll probably be at least ranked 15 or 14. And he throws a high volume of strikes. And he throws a little bit more strikes than Albert Duraev. So I think that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor here. Is I think it's probably going to come probably I like decision. I don't know if he can put out Duraev. I think it's most likely going to come via decision, and it's going to probably be a unanimous decision win. That's the way I see it. I think it's going to be if he does try to finish Duraev, I'd be pretty impressed to see him try to sneak into submission again because Duraev's never been submitted before. So, and Duraev himself, he's a submission threat as well. So that's why I have Park as my two rank.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, and I really do pretty much agree with everything there. I think, as you mentioned, we pretty much agree on those points. I think we just kind of interpret them a little bit differently, which is how we came to the conclusion on the different picks. Because, yeah, Duraev to me, um, the reason I'm leaning him also is because, yeah, Jung Young Park's coming off two submission wins, and I just don't think he's going to be able to get that against Duraev. It's going to be more of a striking match, and if Duraev dictates, I think he's going to be able to take down Jung Young Park and win the wrestling exchanges. I definitely wanted to mention too, though, that I'm big on over on the rounds here. It's something that might be a little bit bold with Park coming off two straight submissions, and we've seen Duraev take a late KO, but that still was technically over 2.5 rounds because that was at 5 minutes in the second round. So it was like at the end of the second round. Um, that being said, I don't think it's going to be an early finish here. I could be wrong, but I'd personally like to take Albert Duraev and over 2.5 on this one.
No, yes. So sounds good. Yes. So for this one, we'll agree to disagree. You have Albert Duraev as your five weight, and I have Jung Young Park as my two weight. Again, I'm not sure that Park can put out Albert, so um, I do have Park winning this by decision. And moving forward, then for my five weight, this is between the women's featherweight bout between Norma Dumont and Chelsea Chandler. For this one, I'm gonna go with the favorite, Norma Dumont. Uh, and reason being is she overall has more experience in the UFC. Chelsea Chandler is coming off a spectacular first round TKO over Julia Storolenko. But that being said, I think there's I feel like some people are underestimating. Not I don't want to say underestimating, but like don't realize like that fight, that win. It's cool that she did beat someone that has UFC experience. But if you look at Julia's record, she is not fare well in the UFC. She's actually won one fight in her UFC career, and it was just a first round submission, which is impressive. But that being said, she's shown already that she doesn't have a chin, and she herself is susceptible to being submitted. So that fight to me doesn't really seem as impressive, and and all of Chelsea's wins prior to that are also to people who they have LFA and some Bellator experience, but not UFC caliber experience. And Norma Dumont, that's the biggest factor that I'm mind with her is that she has been in the UFC for a while, and she has been people who have fought in the UFC longer than her as well. So that's pretty much a big reason why she's my five weight for this one. What weight do you have this fight at, Nick?
I love it, dude. I don't have this one specifically weighted, so this is the one of the 6 fights I didn't wait. But I will say, man, for my 2 cents, I gotta agree with you. Just specifically looking at some of the previous matchups and what Norma Dumont's been able to do in the UFC so far, I would definitely lean on her. She's the favorite for a reason, and I think at this point she's expecting to get the job done. With previous wins against like Aspen Ladd, man, I know those are decision wins, but it's pretty impressive. But it looks like, to me, to be honest, another fight where you might want to look at the over on rounds. Norma Dumont rarely gets a finish in her fights unless she gets finished, like her UFC debut against Megan Anderson. I don't really expect that to happen again here against Chelsea Chandler, although Chelsea did get a first round knockout in her first debut last year in October. I don't think it's going to really happen against Norma Dumont. It is possible. Anything's possible, especially in women's MMA. But that's part of the reason too, man. Women's MMA can be crazy, and that's kind of why I stayed away from this one. Even though we have a main event women's MMA fight here, so we're going to definitely be discussing some women's MMA regardless. Personally, staying away, but I would lean Norma Dumont.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that being said, yeah, both Nick and I, well, Nick's not doesn't have a weight on this fight, but his 2 cents is Norma Dumont, and me, yeah, I feel pretty strong about it, so I have her as my 5 weight.
Definitely a decent option. Like, the only thing that would prevent me from saying to put Norma Dumont on some parlays is just like I said earlier, that it's kind of women's featherweight. You can get that aspect of like Alexa Grasso just coming in and winning a fight that you don't expect him to. It's really happened a bunch of times now. Juliana Pena's done it recently. It's been kind of crazy. And then you get fights like Rose versus Carla Esparza. You know what I'm saying? It's just like what is women's MMA sometimes. So I really like to put my actual money on it, but definitely Norma Dumont might be one of those instances you think about it. That being said, speaking of women's MMA, though, we're definitely not getting away from that tonight because we're moving on to my 4 weight pick. And my 4 weight is on the main event of Saturday night, which is a women's main event headline 5 round bout between Holly Holm and Mayra Bueno Silva. This is an interesting fight. Mayra doesn't really have as much of a star power name as Holly Holm here. I think it's definitely Holly Holm that's carrying the power to be able to headline this card. And she's 41 years old, man, getting to be 42 soon. And it's crazy that she is the favorite at minus 162 and Mayra Bueno Silva's plus 126. But look, Jose, I'm taking Holly Holm as my 4 weight pick here. I've got a lot of confidence in Holly Holm's ability to stand up. And I think her style isn't necessarily a concern to me as much as her age. Like a Francis Ngannou getting to be 42. Okay, that might be a little concerning. But Holly Holm, and she's quick on her feet. She's always been light, quick on her feet, and I think she's still going to have the striking advantage. And to be honest, Bueno Silva's got great jiu-jitsu, but not good wrestling. And that's another big thing that I think Holly Holm will have to her advantage, that she can deflect. If even Bueno Silva tries to get takedowns, I think they'll get deflected. But that being said, what do you got for this one?
Yeah, so just by coincidence, I happen to have Holly Holm as my 4 weight as well. And reason being is, yeah, Holly Holm, just she's a vet now. She's just been at the top for so long, and it's just crazy because she's gotten so many title shots and just has always come up short. And if it wasn't, for Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, pretty much she would be up there. But she's beating the people that she should be beating as always, and she's beating people a lot younger than her. She beat Yana Santos her last fight via unanimous decision, and Yana's 33. And prior to that too, she the last one she had prior to that was against Irene Aldana, who we know just recently challenged Amanda Nunes for the belt. So she's been able to hang up there with some of the younger up and coming girls. But that being said, female fighters I should say. But that being said, she's like, I don't know, for the female, like, I don't want to say like the Mayweather, but like John Jones, like almost like a female John Jones, just without as much credentials. She's just really smart. She comes from a really good camp, and she's just really mentally sound. She knows what she needs to do to get the win. She's not forcing finishes. She's pretty much just a point style fighter and racking up those points, similar to Wonder Boy. And if she sees a finish opportunity, she will take advantage of it, but she doesn't force it like a Cyborg or Amanda Nunes have at times. That being said, yeah, I feel like just her experience is the reason why she's my 4 weight. I was debating having her be my 3 weight. you'll see why when I talk about it next. But yeah, like, and the reason being is, yeah, the one thing is just it is her age a little bit that does kind of scare me. But because I just really don't know how many more fights she has left in her in the UFC. Because she's already 41, so I imagine, not many. And I don't know if this is a fight too that will guarantee her a title fight, but who knows? This division is kind of wild right now, and it seems like it's just pretty much all up for grabs. So, that being said, yeah, I agree with you on having Holly Holm as my four weight.
Yeah, I mean theoretically the belt is vacant at this point, and the UFC would just need to pony up the heart to put the belt on the line or close the division because it's like it seemed like they didn't want to close the division when Nunes retired. It's still going on. Who knows? But yeah, I mean for all those reasons, man. And as you kind of briefly mentioned, like I kind of liked your comparison. Like it's a lot to compare someone to John Jones, but I'll say in women's MMA, there's few other people that you could other than Holly Holm, especially because not many people also realize her wrestling ability. I mean, even against Yana Santos earlier this year, man, 4 months ago, she took down Yana Santos 4 times. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's going to be a factor against Mara Bueno Silva in the sense that Bueno Silva has a submission threat, no doubt about it. But she's been the one that gets taken down a lot of times in her fights. When she lost against Manon Fiorot, she got taken down twice. When she lost against Montana de la Rosa, she got taken down 3 times and got 0 takedowns of her own. And I think, going back to what Holly Holm's been able to do in her whole career in point fight and know exactly what she needs to do to get the win, I think she's going to be able to put it together against Bueno Silva pretty confidently.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Nick. And if there's anything else that kind of scares me, it's just like you mentioned earlier, just it being women's MMA. Anything can happen. Like when Juliana Pena first beat Amanda Nunes, and Holly Holm when she came off that win against Ronda Rousey years ago. Misha Tate eventually submitted her at UFC 200. So, and that no one, and Misha Tate back then was, I'm pretty sure she was a big underdog. So that maybe it's that is just the one thing, I guess, too, is just kind of like anything can happen, just like Dricus Duplessis just beating Robert Whitaker. Anything, it can
It's
happen.
true.
But you know looking at it on paper and just seeing the history that Holly Holmes had and the success that she's had in the UFC, it's just hard to deny she's not looking like she's aging, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and I think her style goes along with it. Like we're probably gonna see John Jones retire later this year after his Stipe fight, but in all reality, man, just based like I get he's been fighting for so long, but John Jones is another guy. I really think if he wanted, he could fight into his 40s and continue to dominate, similar to Glover was able to. But it's hard to blame John for wanting to beat the greatest and give up because he really is the at that point it's hard to argue him being like it's interesting how the GOAT conversation always changes as the new person retires. Like like some generations always going to think Khabib is the GOAT. Some generations always going to think GSP is the GOAT. Some generations are always going to think John Jones is the GOAT. It's all just when you saw these fighters as you were watching UFC happen, and you just kind of cling to one of them. Because in another 10 years, I guarantee you, there will be another fighter where it's like he's the GOAT. And then when Volkanovski retires, then he's the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? It's always going to be an ever going thing. It's a
Yeah,
slippery slope.
yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you on that. I have many goats too, to be honest, like in the UFC. So, it is
Right?
there's like it's almost hard to say there is a goat because like I would really want to see them all fight each other. That's like the only way. But
I
to
feel
really
like you got to
determine the
do it
goat,
by division. Like
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
really fair way.
I agree. Every division should have a goat. Amanda Nunes definitely goat of women's featherweight MMA, and I think the other one was bantamweight.
Bantamweight. Yep,
Yeah,
bantamweight.
bantamweight. And yeah, so that being said, yeah.
Just an interesting conversation, but that takes us to the conclusion of our first two picks. 5 weight and 4 weights are covered. So, Jose, I'll let you take it away then with the 3 weight.
So for my three weight fight, this is between the big boys, between Walt Harris and Josh Parisian. Right now, Walt Harris is the betting favorite at -186, while Parisian is the betting underdog at +144. It's Walt Harris. He's kind of been a little up and down. in his UFC career. He's unfortunately riding a 3 fight losing streak, but he was, early on in his UFC career, when he was ranked, he was gaining a good amount of steam and building up some momentum. And it's been some time. It's been since 2021. He's dealt with a lot of stuff outside of the cage as well. But we've seen him that he was a part of John Jones's camp when he returned to fight Cyril Gahn. So I do think the new group of people he surrounded himself with is going to play a big role in this one. So that's why I have him taking the W for this one. He is my 3 weight. Nothing against Josh Persian, but I truly think that Walt Harris is just too powerful and just big for him. Uh, Not too big, I guess, but Persian, he himself, he has the TKO and KO power. But when you're training with one of the best of all time, John Jones, I think it's hard. I think this Walt Harris is going to come back. Different, I think more powerful, taking that extensive time off, and he really needs to, because if he loses this fight, I think Walt Harris would be out the door. So for this fight, what weight do you have it at, Nick?
Man, so this is the same one again, man. I have my 3 weight on Walt Harris, dude. I agree that he's gonna take this fight. This is very hard though, man. Wow. There's so many elements going on. You mentioned the things he's got going on outside the cage. How about the fact that he hasn't won a fight since 2019? I mean, that's tough, man. It's one of the reasons, like, I like Walt Harris a lot in this matchup, but there's just a few things going against him that are make it really tough to put him any higher than my 3 weight, because I really did consider it. But yeah, I think I agree with you, because you even mentioned maybe putting Holm at yours 3 weight and switching Harris up. But yeah, dude, it's just one thing I can't do with a guy who's shown to have struggled in the past, gotten knocked out 3 times in a row before his last UFC win. And granted, though, those are really top end heavyweights: Alistair Overeem, Volkov, and now a guy who's climbing the division currently, Tybura. I mean, that's not a bad loss to take at this point. And Parisian, another point I wanted to make is this also kind of a pick against Parisian. I don't have anything against him, but I just don't think he's that good either. I definitely am not impressed with any wins he has in the UFC, period. And Walt Harris has seen a lot more competition and beaten much more respectable fighters, at least like Alexei Olenek. I get that it was a first round TKO, and Alexei Olenek's the kind of a grappling kind of guy. But hey, he made it happen, and Olenek's been around for a while because he wins. So I don't know, just based off things like that, Walt Harris to me has more experience. He's got better wins under his belt, and you mentioned the training with John Jones. That's another big factor. I love that. I love the training with John Jones, even if it was back in March and it hasn't happened since. He's a part of American Top Team, so ideally they've got some top end people in competition for her to spar with and get ready. The last thing is just the fact that he's kind of old, man. Walt Harris, not young. He's 40 years old, man. So he's kind of an old guy. Josh Percy ain't young either, but he's 6 years younger than Walt Harris. So I'm not sure that's going to matter as much, but it's something to note at least.
Yeah. That you mentioned that. Yeah, Walt Harris has been in the UFC for quite some time. I didn't realize he's been in since 2013. So yeah, he's seen the likes of a lot of big names. He's fought even Fabricio Verdum back in the day, post champ Verdum. So yeah, like I hope he should bring a little more of that in him, and with the new skills he's learned from Jones and his camp over at American Top Team. Yeah, like you said, I don't think Pearson's that good. He has TKOs on his record, but only one in the UFC. So I don't, and one I guess on Dana White's Contender Series as well. So two, if you look at it that way. That being said, I don't see Walt Harris being lights out. If anything, if he does win this, either he's gonna put the lights out or he's gonna win it by decision, even though he does have a high finish rate. Like he's actually never gotten a decision. So who knows? Again, I think this could be different.
Yeah, fair enough, man. So the Walt Harris pick then, the heavyweights on this card will be Jose and I's 3 weight with Walt Harris. Moving forward, I'll take you guys to now what's going to be my 2 weight. We've covered both of our 3, 4, and 5 weights, our most confident picks. We are at our least confident picks, but still picks that we like. And that being said, my 2 weight on this card, excuse me, I'm looking at one of the earlier cards on this. or excuse me, earlier fights on this card, one of the lightweight bouts between Otman Azaitar and Francisco Prado. And, this is kind of a value pick. I like Otman Azaitar a lot in this. He is my two weight. I think Otman Azaitar, look, I think this is going to be a reckless fight. Um, I really am leaning under 2.5 rounds here. These guys are going to go in the ring and they're going to swing hard. It's fascinating to see that this fight opened up with Ottman as a plus 110 underdog, and that's now moved to plus 102. And Francisco Prado was a minus 135 favorite down to 130. So there's been a little bit of money coming in on Ottman. And to me, it just comes down to Ottman being the stronger, more power striker here. And I think this is kind of just going to end early. I think both these guys are going to collide like meteoroids, like asteroids, whatever, and make some noise. And then there's going to be lights out in the first round. So what do you got for this one, Jose?
Yeah, so Nick, so for this one, I actually did not. This is one of the fights I did not actually put money on, but yeah, my 2 cents going with this one. I'm gonna have to agree with you. Amin, even though he is the slight underdog, yeah, that first round loss to Matt Favela, it was Matt Favela like he's right now riding. He just beat Drew Dober also in the first round. He's currently riding a three fight winning streak. So that being said, like, yeah, it's no shame in that. You know what I'm saying? So for this one, yeah, I'm agreeing with what you said, man.
Yeah, dude. And on top of that, he gets two performance of the night bonuses ahead of that. And his UFC debut and his fight in 2020, he gets the performance bonus. So, I don't know, man. Matt Frivola, to me, is a very acceptable loss to take as a newcomer to the UFC. Matt Frivola has been dominating a lot of his opponents. And it's not like Prado's done a whole lot. He lost to Jamie Larkey in his debut. And Jamie Larkey, definitely a good fighter. But his best win is against Michael Johnson, who's like a UFC, like, he's around, but he's gonna win one, lose one. He's like 500. He's just like the average. He's the definition of average, and losing to that means you're a little below average. And Prado lost to a little below average. I don't know. MMA math. We've said it multiple times. Does not always add up, but I gotta go for it on this case. It just seems definitely like an easy situation to take a Zaitar, and minus 2.5 rounds, under 2.5 rounds.
So
But
then, yeah. So then you have Atman Zatar as your
yep,
two weight, and then that leaves to one more fight to talk about, and that is our one
we
weight
still
fight.
got we still got two.
What's the last fight?
You got your two weight. We haven't discussed your two weight yet.
Oh, I have Zhang Young Park for that one. That was when we talked about that one earlier with
Oh,
Albert Duraev, your five weight.
that's right.
That was our
That's
first fight.
right. Good
That was our
call.
first fight. Yes, sir. So yeah.
Cool. That's right.
So
Yeah, you took the underdog. I gotcha. So yeah, we do only have one more fight, man. Time's flying.
yeah. No, wait. No, you took the underdog. Yeah. Yeah, you took the underdog. Albert Duraev is plus 134.
Yeah.
Zhang Young Park
Yep. That's right.
one
Yep.
seven.
If I said underdog, if I said underdog, I meant I'm taking the underdog.
No, yeah, you're all good, dog. So then, yeah, like, the next fight is this one is the one between Terrace McKinney and Nazim Saudikov. Right
Yeah.
now, Nazim is the betting favorite at minus 162, while McKinney is the betting underdog at plus 126. For this one, I'm going with the underdog, and the reason being is again, like, you know, the MMA does not add up. These guys have all fought each other. Even the prior fight we just talked about. McKinney, Terrence McKinney has a win over Matt Fravella, and he's actually his UFC debuts when he got that first round KO over Matt Fravella, and is like, again, as we said, he's now on a 3 fight winning streak. But then Terrence McKinney also loses to Drew Dober. But for this one, I'm just going with him because he does have more experience in the UFC, and I do like the taller, like, lengthier guys. Like, if they have a reach advantage and they can throw a good amount of strikes. Nazim does throw more significant strikes per minute, but Terrence McKinney, he can do a lot of damage with those long limbs, and I don't think it's crazy to think that, yeah, Ismail, he is coming off that crazy KO knee, but that was like I don't want to say it's a Hail Mary, but it was definitely just he just went for it explosive, and he just caught him. He got caught right there. It was the best way I look at it, I look at it. So for this one, I can even see him possibly sneaking in a submission on Nazim. So, but Nazim, he hasn't been in the UFC long enough, so I really want to see how he does. This is definitely gonna be his biggest challenge yet. So for that one, that's why I have Terrence McKinney as my one way. It's just because I also haven't seen enough of Nazim. So who do you have for this fight, Nick?
Yeah, I got you, man. That's fair, dude. That's totally fair. That Nazim is kind of a newcomer, and T Rex isn't necessarily an experienced veteran. He's seen more in the ring for sure than Nazim has, especially with that Frivola and Drew Dober experience. I'm going against you here. This is my one weight, and I'm going with Nazim. To me, it's pretty much on the premise that I think Nazim really just needs to avoid an early flurry here. In all of Terrence McKinney's UFC appearances, it's ended at latest by 2 minutes into the second round. Whether he's gotten KO'd or KO'd someone else, or in two cases he got a submission win, the fights ended pretty quickly in most cases. I think if Nazim is going to be able to fend off some of those early like attempts, like early aggressiveness, and I don't want to say desperation because it's not necessarily desperation until he thinks he's going to lose and it's the third round, but the desperation like looking kind of moves where he's really swinging for the fences or really trying to go for a takedown. I like Nazim's ability that he's shown so far to be able to deflect takedowns, but like you said, there's definitely an element of this being his hardest test. This is harder of a test for Nazim than it is for Terrence McKinney. So that's why he's my one weight, and I'm just not, excuse me, not as confident.
Yeah, so we both had like a similar thought process in this one. In some degree, like both, we have our both as our one weights, but different guys with different outcomes of this fight. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. I think that being said, I think that's all I have to say about this fight, Nick.
Sounds good, man. Well, in that case, that will wrap it up then. We've covered all of the main card fights for UFC Vegas 77, and the UFC is going to continue cranking out cards. Jose, they got fights. Like I said earlier, they got two pay-per-views in July. Fights coming up for multiple weeks in a row. So everybody, make sure especially if you've listened to this far, please like the video, subscribe, and send a comment down below. Ask any questions or let us know who you're betting on, and who you agree with and the disagreements that Jose and I had. I'd say to follow us on Twitter, but we got banned. I'm trying to work with them to get that account unbanned, but hey, in the meantime, we really don't have a choice. So that being said, you're going to have to go to YouTube to get your fix of Moneyline MMA. Our bets are going to continue to win, so definitely keep tuning in. Thanks for listening and have a great week, guys.